Welcome to the third episode, where we will be talking about meaning of life, creativity, justice, visual spatial intelligence, and more with Erik Thor. Let's start. Instead of introducing the guest, I guess my first question will be, who are you?
Well, good question. I'm a Swedish YouTuber. I make videos on the myers-briggs type indicator and the 16 personalities. So I got my channel Erik Thor, and I've been on there since uh, I started the channel 2007, but I've been posting actively since the past 5 years. I'm known for making videos about flow and how the 16 personalities can find their flow state. So I believe everyone has their unique values and interests. And if you can find out what your values and interests are, you can maximize your energy and motivation and, live a happier and more fulfilling life.
That seems great. So instead of me answering my own questions, like what would be your question for me?
Well, first of all, I'm really curious. Why did you decide to start this podcast, and what's your goal with the show?
So my goal for starting the podcast was that first of all I wanted to uh, connect more with others and basically get to talk to other people more. And I thought that creating a podcast could be a nice kind of way to create some kind of meaning behind it. So it's not just random that, hey, you want to chat or something, but that I would have something to actually go about and ask
Right.
others to talk about. And also, since uh, when I was looking at YouTube videos or other podcasts, these kind of interviews were probably one of the things where I saw that people were meeting uh, other people or new people the most, because it is like probably one of the easiest way of collaboration. Because if
Yeah,
you want to work on some like video or project, then it takes much more effort and time. But doing these kind of interviews, it's kind of very low production. So I thought that, well, I may as well try it of how it will go.
that's really cool. And have you had any cool connections so far?
Uh, so far, I've been only asking people that I've already kind of knew, uh, at least to some kind of level. So I haven't been actually trying to reach out to people with coming to my podcast as the first thing that I would talk about them. And I'm not really sure if that will be even a good strategy, to try to ask people directly if they want to come to my podcast if they don't know me at all. So maybe I'm not really sure. First, I started with people that I knew a little bit and wanted to test this out with them because I guess it would be easier to ask them. And when it comes to asking people randomly, uh, I may try it. One thing that I've been actually thinking about is that instead of asking other creators and people who are used to doing these kind of interviews and that kind of stuff, that maybe I will try to do it with strangers. That I will just set up a time that I will go live and anyone will be able to join. But I guess with this, there can be some challenges when you're just inviting random people and strangers you don't know. So yeah,
Yeah, I
I'm
guess
not
the
really
most
sure.
important question is like, what kind of people are you looking to meet? Are you looking to meet with other entities? Are you looking to have discussions on politics or philosophy? Like, uh, yeah, depending on that, that's defines what kind of people you want to invite for the podcast, right? So, um, what kind of people are you looking to connect with the most? Who do you enjoy talking to the most? Like, what subjects do you enjoy talking about?
I believe that I am not really like focused on any kind of specific category of people, that I'm more or less open to talking with pretty much anyone,
Hmm.
because I believe that everyone has something interesting to say, and
Yeah.
everyone can actually contribute with um, either their personal stories or their knowledge that they have acquired, or are also able to, maybe even if they cannot provide some interesting answers, they can actually ask some interesting questions,
For
because
sure.
also asking questions is important, because sometimes the best way to find an answer is to ask the correct question. And that
Yeah.
is also why I try to include or create the structure for this interview in a way that I would allow or incentivize the guest to actually ask questions. Because, for example, with you, you are kind of an expert on psychology, MBTI, or your own flow code that you're talking about. And therefore, you may be able to even come up with really good questions regarding to these kind of things. Uh, and maybe if I will not be even able to answer the questions, maybe the audience will be able to think about them and provide their own answers. Because in a way, even if we are answering these kind of questions, sometimes it's not even the most important information that we say and how we answer those questions, but it can be also an inspiration for others to think about their own answers,
Yeah.
and maybe to learn or gain clarity on their own answers for certain things.
There's something you said that was fascinating me a bit, and that's regarding to questions and finding the right question. It almost sounds like you have an ideology around questions or a philosophy around it. Like, where does that idea come from? That you have to find the right question to ask. Where, how, what made you start thinking like that?
I guess my perspective on this is that sometimes you cannot find an answer because you're looking at it from a different perspective that does not allow
Mhm.
you to come to the right answer that you're looking for, or you
Yeah.
keep looking for answers that actually do not help you, not
Mhm.
because the answers would not be actually answering the questions, but maybe the issue is in asking the right questions.
Yeah.
Because in a way, if you pose a really good question or ask a really good question, then the question itself may already provide an answer.
Hmm. Indeed. Like the reason why I bring it up is because I was reading a series. I have it actually right behind me on the bookshelf. It's called Spellslinger. And in the he gets to meet with an oracle. The main character gets to meet with an oracle, and he gets to ask her anything because he wants to figure out, the answer. And what she tells him is, "You're asking me the wrong question." Like she keeps putting it back to him, like no, you can figure it out. You have the answer, but you just have to be brave enough. And she was insinuating here that he wasn't being vulnerable. He wasn't daring to ask what he really wanted to know. So he went around it. So he sidestepped it. So it's they even have an art form around it. The author of it, he called it Arta Precis, and it was the art of precision, or like being able to know like the heart of a matter, to be able to cut straight into something and see the very deepest essence of what something is. So yeah, it's when you're talking about it that really made me think about that.
Okay, great. So when it comes to these kind of questions, I believe that one question that we as a whole humanity cannot even agree or find the correct answer to, because it depends more on the perspective you're looking at it or who you ask, would be
Mhm.
the question on the meaning of life. So what would be your perspective on trying to answer this question?
Yeah, because I've been thinking about this question my whole life. Huh? I'm sure most people have, but I've been really thinking about it. So that's almost been the heart of my studies. Trying to figure out, where does meaning come from. And I know some people would say that, well, you create meaning. Whatever you decide is meaningful is meaningful. But I've always kind of revolted against that idea, because I believe that there is something that is meaningful to every person, but we don't know what it is yet. So um, it's yeah, like there's two possible answers. Either meaning doesn't like either meaning comes from a god. As three answers, which I kind of refute to some extent, because I think meaning has to be personal. It has Everyone has their own meaning. Like you could say it's from God, but you can say like everyone has their own quest, their own journey, in life, what they need to achieve in a sense. You can say that this is the modern interpretation, the postmodern one, almost, you could say, which is, you decide it yourself and there is no inherent meaning, and you just make it up. But I dare anyone who's like watching this show right now, to take a second to meditate, to step back into yourself, and to ask yourself questions. Yes or no? Do I want to, I don't know, work at my current job? Am I happy? And you'll find that you can answer those questions pretty well if you're really thinking about it, and if you take a second to separate yourself from all the bullshit, I could say, and really to think about, okay, what is it you want? If you can take the time to meditate and check in with yourself, you'll find that you have an inner compass, an inner meaning, an inner answer that will constantly guide you if you let it. So there is a meaning. I can't say where it comes from, or what exactly the nature of it is. Maybe it's God's voice, or maybe it's your own self answering back to yourself in a mirror. Like feel free to let me know, like in the comments, what you guys think, but what you Marty think, of course. But for me, it's there sure is something inside you that will tell you what the right answer is, and it will feel very, very right if you check in with it.
I guess one of the hardest things is to actually try to come to an answer, because even though you may have some kind of feeling about it, it may be very hard to articulate. And one of the things I noticed that you actually were saying is with the taking a step back and meditate and asking yourself questions, that actually maybe the best way is not to start with this grand question of trying to answer the whole meaning as a whole, but maybe you
Mm.
can start with answering smaller questions that
Yeah,
are more easy to answer. Like you
yeah,
said,
break it down.
like break it down. Do you like the job that you're currently doing? Are you
Yeah.
happy? Or little things, because even though they may not give you the whole answer, they may actually at least progress you on
Mm.
on on finding the answer.
Yeah.
And this is something that I believe is important in order to not get stuck, is to focus sometimes more on the process rather than achieving the end goal,
Yeah.
because some goals can be very even daunting to try to achieve, or
Hmm.
they may be so big that you may get overwhelmed, and therefore breaking it down to small things and getting progress will not only help you stay motivated maybe, but it
Hmm.
will make you feel like you're moving somewhere, you're accomplishing something.
Yeah.
Because in a way, maybe nobody will be able to answer the question of meaning of life in a way that everyone else could agree on.
You shouldn't
uh,
try.
and therefore maybe trying to articulate it from your own perspective, maybe the thing that is better to start with than to try to answer uh,
Yeah.
the big question as a whole.
You know what the ancient Greeks did on the question of the meaning of life? They just
You know,
started making a whole lexicon of it. Like they just took like everything everyone's. They just like did a survey like with everyone around, and they just put in, oh, for you it's gratification, hedonism, pleasure, enjoyment. For that person it's sex. For that person it's uh, being kind to others, and for that person it's being smart or accomplished. And then they just put all of it in a book. Like they saw that, okay. Um, this is what the meaning of life is, and it's in here somewhere, so you can kind of pick and choose what you like, so you get your own like smorgasbord, as we would say in Sweden, with different dishes, and you just whatever resonates with you. That's also what social psychologists do. Like there's this guy Schwartz. He does his yearly values survey, and he just goes out and asks people across the world, what do you value, and then he just forms this whole map. And he says, oh yeah, these people value tradition, and these people, they value achievement, and yeah, like that's it. There's a different meaning for everyone, so that's why we can't agree on it. But there certainly is a meaning. It's just that it's individualized, right?
Now, since you have been in this area of psychology and you have a lot of knowledge in this, do you think that there are certain kind of patterns in what people may try to navigate to when it comes, for example, meaning of life? Like if certain kind of personality types are leaning more towards certain answers and others
Mm.
for different ones?
Yeah. Uh, Now there's two answers here. I'll start with the easy one. And the easy one is, if you're an intuitive, you value freedom, you value creativity, you value change, you value novelty, new experiences. If you're a sensory type, you value tradition, health, family, roots, having a sense of duty, responsibility, being loyal. And if you're a feeling type, you value meaningful connections, connection to nature, giving and helping others. And if you're a thinking type, you value achievement, you value to some extent power, accomplishment, intelligence. So um, this is the easy answer. Like if you ask people across the MBTI to fill out these surveys, you're going to find those are the patterns you're going to find. Um, but there is also a difficult answer, and that is that values get more and more complicated the older you get. So when you get older, you start becoming a lot more nuanced on what freedom is, or what being kind is, or what being successful means. So you could say that the values get eroded, but what I'd say happens, is just that people learn more and more to nuance their definitions, from the black and white teenager, like, oh, I just want to have power and I just want to be successful and I don't care about anything else or anyone else, to, learning that day, I want to share my success and accomplishment with other people. I want to spread like positive vibes and innovation and growth across the world, and do good things. Look at Bill Gates, starting up Microsoft and just doing his own selfish gain, race to create computers, and later on, like developing to, spread vaccines across the world. So people change and values get more complicated, but there are patterns.
Now, since you mentioned that there are some kind of patterns, but then it gets more complicated, then I guess you also believe that learning about yourself from the personality types and psychology can actually help you uh, find a direction that
Yeah.
uh, may move you forward in this kind of thing. And you even are talking about your flow code. That is something that I believe is unique to you, that you came up with it, right?
Yeah.
So can you tell me more about what it is and how you do define it and how can it help you?
Yeah. So it really is quite simple. When the people talk about the MBTI and the 16 personalities, the first question is, am I an introvert or am I an extrovert? But ultimately, how do you tell? Like, is it just because you have a lot of friends, or is it like how many friends do you need to have? How do we make up these definitions? Like, why does it even matter that we talk about whether we're introvert or extrovert or not? Because most healthy people in the world can be both, right? So you can be outgoing and social. I mean, you identify as an introvert, but you're running a podcast and you're looking to connect with people across the world and have good conversations. Like so it's not that simple as, so I don't like to hang out with people or I like to hang out with people. So what I said is, let's try to talk about personality psychology from the perspective of what values we have, what interests we have, and what gives us energy and what motivates us. So the flow code is really that the stating of, what kind of lifestyle would I like to live, and how outgoing would I like to be, and what kind of things would I like to go out and do, and what kind of interests do I find myself most drawn to, and what things can I spend hours and hours doing, fully focused and fully immersed without any reward or compliments or praise from other people. What kind of things do I enjoy doing? And I'd say that's your personality type. Your personality is what you enjoy doing. It's not your current mask or persona. It's not what you learned to do because your parents told you to do it, or because your school expects it from you, or because you're a boss of a company, you have to be a certain person. But you have a unique flow type, so that's who you are at your heart. If you are honest with yourself, and if you think about what you really enjoy and what you really value, then you know what kind of personality you are.
That seems like a great answer. Now, is there another question that you would like to explore or bring up?
Yeah, I'm curious about you, because you are a video game developer, right?
Yes,
Yeah. And where were you based again?
I'm in Slovakia.
Right. And I see you've got like an amazing Funko Pop collection behind you. And I was wondering, like, what do you enjoy about that? Like, what kind of things do you enjoy the most? Like, do you enjoy your job, or do you enjoy your Funko Pop collection, or what kind of things do you do just for fun, like to get energy?
Uh, when it comes to my job, I'm basically a level designer. So I'm creating these kind of maps and characters and stories that basically the players play. And what I kind of enjoy about that is um, that I'm creating these kind of environments and stories and try to communicate things visually, which is something that I enjoy more than, for example, talking or writing down things.
Mhm.
And uh, when we're creating these kind of levels and stories and games, we always come up with some kind of story that we want to communicate and we write it down. And then basically, I have some kind of points that I need to communicate in the story. There is some kind of environment. And I think that I enjoy taking the written kind of form and text and story and converting it into a visual experience. And since it is a game, then the player can play it, and also there is this kind of interaction with the player and the environment and characters in there. And I believe that creating this kind of experience for the player that is kind of visual is something that I kind of enjoy about things. In a way, I believe that I'm much more of a visual person than uh, analytical or text or language person.
Yeah.
So that is also why I sometimes may find it difficult to communicate like with talking,
Yeah.
because I imagine all of these kind of images in my head and then I need to translate them. So it's in a
Mhm.
way, if I was always speaking like different language with others in order to communicate, and I
Yeah.
need to translate all of my ideas and all of these things into something else. But when I'm creating the games, I do not need to basically translate uh, the uh, the ideas or the things into language and a text, but I do it the other way around, that I'm translating the text into something visual.
Yeah.
So I guess it's much more closer to my natural way of communication, and that is probably why I enjoy it quite a lot.
That makes me curious, because I've thought a lot about visual spatial intelligence in the past. Would you also say that you're a person that doesn't think in words? Like, sometimes they talk about people who have no inner voice, like who think mainly in images and not in words. Would you say you're one of those people?
I would say that I definitely think more in images, but sometimes I wonder whether it's actually the images that I think in, or I just prefer to use images as a way to visualize it. Because when
Hmm.
I'm thinking about abstract concepts, then these kind of things do not have any kind of visuals. You cannot
Right.
draw them because they don't have any kind of a form that could be represent. Well, the only thing that you can do is to create a symbol or some representation of the abstract concept, but the abstract concept itself does
Mm.
not have any visualization.
Yeah.
And that is why I guess that when I think, I prefer to do it visually, because there is more freedom in
Yeah.
using images. Because when I try to compare text and visuals, then text is basically sequential, line by line,
Yeah.
and it is basically only one direction. But when you
Yeah.
think in images, it's like kind of radial, and you can use space and 3D, and
Yeah.
it's much easier to think about relationships or more complex things as they
Right.
connect to each other compared to the sequential kind of text kind of form.
Yeah.
And that is why I believe that the visual kind of thinking gives me more freedom in order to try to represent these kind of abstract concepts.
Yeah.
So I'm not entirely sure whether the reason why I think visually more is because it is something that would be natural, or because it is something that I believe gives me more freedom into transform these abstract concepts to.
That explanation makes so much sense. Here's the thing. I was curious. I think I know the answer already, but I assume you're also a very creative person.
Uh, I would say so, but it
Yeah.
kind of depends also on the definition of creativity. Uh,
Mm.
so some people can look at it from the perspective of being very artistic and creating art and drawing or
That's a
things
very
like these.
niche. Yeah.
Uh, some other people may even, like you are also a creator and you do videos, so that
Mm.
is more audiovisual content. Other
I also
people
write.
do podcasts and these kind of things, which are only audio, and it is
Yeah.
also creation. Now,
Yeah.
other people are creating systems or creating some kind of processes and these kind of things, and that is also a creation.
Right.
So, in a way, I think that the basic association that usually people have when someone says that they're creative, and then they tend to think about these more artistic things.
Yeah.
But in a way, if you try to break it down, then creation is basically inventing or creating something new from the create,
Yeah.
and you can create many kind of
Yeah.
different
Like,
things.
if we say it's artistic, well, then I'd say Edison or Tesla wouldn't be creative, right? Or Da Vinci. Okay, Da Vinci would be creative, but basically, to me, how I'm seeing it today is creative people. They are capable of both daydreaming and visualizing ideas, and making those ideas come to reality. So if you're capable of doing both of those things, I'd say then you're creative. I'd say if you're only like thinking about writing books or thinking about stories but never really write anything or never really make anything, I'd say like you have potential to become creative, but you're not creative yet, you know. And I'd say if you're building things and constructing things and doing things, but you're only doing what everyone else is doing, I'd say you're still not creative. You can become creative if you learn to think out of the box and if you learn to like come up with your own ideas, but you're not creative yet. So I think it's that capacity to translate ideas that are your own to the world somehow, and to make them a reality, and that's very difficult. So I'd say not a lot of people are creative. Like even if you think if you have a generous definition where you include, you know, artists, musicians, writers, podcasters, you know, it's still not a lot of people in the larger scope of things. So, like you have a lot of people who say, "Oh, I'd love to start my own channel," or "I'd love to, you know, write my own book one day," you know. But if you think about it, not a lot of people actually do that, right?
Yes, I believe the hardest thing, because what you were saying, you actually made a really good video that I liked, where you looked at it from the perspective that there are people who are living in the reality and there are people who are daydreaming all the time. But
Yeah,
the real creators are those who try to connect these kind of things together,
yeah,
and basically that is the creation itself, where they convert the ideas into something that can be communicated that is part of the reality.
exactly. That's
Uh,
exactly what I'm saying, and I
and
was connecting it to the visual spatial intelligence. Because my question is, do you think that and I think you were touching on it a little bit. If you would limit yourself to only thinking in words, you wouldn't be able to be as creative. And you need images and symbols and charts and visuals in order to be truly creative and to truly bring new ideas in.
I would definitely agree. So, in a way, I see words and language only as the trigger or stimulation for the images itself.
Yeah.
So, when I look at the communication, basically the words I'm saying, their main purpose is for you to trigger the ideas or the meaning that you have learned to attach to these kind of different kind of sounds uh, and letters in order to stimulate your mind and bring you the memories or associations you have with these kind of things. Because whenever I think there was this kind of a nice test that it was from Tony Buzan. He's basically creating mind maps and these kind of things. And he had this really nice test that when you say a word like banana, like what do you actually think about when I say this?
Yellow, monkeys, sports drinks.
And if you can think about, uh, have you seen something in your head when I say this word? Have you visualized the yellow color, or did
Mhm.
you visualize the letters like yellow spelled
No,
out?
I saw it visually in my head.
Yeah, and basically with this kind of test, he's trying to show that um, basically people think visually. Now, this may not be true for all people. Some people have this kind of condition where they actually cannot visualize things in their head.
I think
But
that's
I believe,
Anastasia or something.
yeah, but I believe that for most people, people think about things visually, and sometimes it is so quick and short that they may not realize that they actually visualize the thing, and that is why I actually believe that like images and visuals are like higher form of communication
Mhm.
than language or words.
Yeah.
Uh, because when I look at it from the perspective uh, of, for example, the sequence versus radial, or there is also this kind of saying that one picture is worth thousand words or something
Yeah.
like that. And one thing that I've been actually studying is also memorization and these kind of
Mhm.
things.
Yeah. Same.
And uh, the people who can memorize the cards, like a deck of cards, within just a few seconds.
Yeah.
I've been studying how they're actually doing it, and they're doing it in a way that they're converting all of these kind of words and cards into uh, heavy, visually stimulative images. So, for example, they're using the strategy of person, uh, action, and object. So they, for all numbers, like they have this kind of lists that for from 1 to 100 they have picked 100 people, 100 actions, and 100 objects, and then they're converting these cards into numbers and the numbers into images. So in a way they're not remembering the cards based on what is written on the card, so they're not remembering like diamond king, but what they're remembering is the story based on the characters that they convert from the numbers. So that is the way of how they are able to memorize so much so quickly, because they think about the story. Like uh, Einstein kicked a basketball, for example, and
Mhm.
they first converted into this kind of visuals. They remember the story of what happened, and then when they are supposed to basically tell uh, the order of the cards, they just decode it back from the images.
That's fascinating. I want to actually jump back to first the images. And I want to get to this one as well because I think this is also really interesting. But first, in regards to the images, I want to mention Carl Jung because Carl Jung believed that Symbols and images were the way the unconscious dialogues with the conscious mind. So we need, and he even come up with something he called the transcendent function to explain this process. So he said, like, if you want to be able to, because here's the thing, everyone has a conscious reality. They have a set of programs they run every day, set of things they do at work, standard responses they memorized, uh, a set of words that they have fresh in their head, very close in the mind, in a sense. However, this set of conscious structures can only do a set of things, so it's limited, and that's why we tend to feel very limited and stuck a lot of the time. We feel like we want to change something in our life, but we have no idea how to do it. Well, thank God we have an unconscious structure of things we can pull from. Technically, our potential is limitless. We have so much we could do, so many things we could learn. Say, you could become a mathematician, you could learn to count cards, as you talked about now. You could go into poker, become a musician. Like, you could do basically anything you'd like at this point. But how do you get there? Like, how does that happen? How does that transformation even begin? Um, well, first, it helps if you are already a creative person, if you are good at thinking in images, and if you're good at understanding and entertaining symbolism. Because if you're because there is no way that you can learn new things from your existing knowledge structure. So if you continue to hold on to your knowledge, what you know, your past experiences, keep rationalizing the same things over and over again, nothing is going to change. You can explain a million times over why you haven't become successful yet, or why your relationship is not going the way you want it to, or why things are not like working for you. But images, art, music, those are the kind of things that provoke large shifts in people. So we are mesmerized by symbols and images, and like we see like recurring patterns, we see numbers repeating themselves, we start going, what does that number mean, why do I keep seeing that number? And those kind of things are things that start a transformative process in the mind, because those get your mind like realizing, hey, I don't know everything, and I have to think of new explanations, new words, and I have to think of new ways to organize my head to explain this and to make sense of this. So it seems that if you're able to think visually, that already suggests that you can change more easily and that you have more cognitive flexibility. So I wonder, are you a person that changes very quickly? And would you say that you're a person that finds it easy to adjust your behavior or learn new things?
I guess in order to answer this, I need to look at it from two perspectives. One would be basically my values, which I believe that it is something that does not really change that lot, because I've spent very long time in trying to uh, find them, refine them, clarify them, and basically these are the things that I try to stay aligned with the most. And because I've spent so much time into refining them and sticking to them, because I believe that I guess these are the best ones that I could come up with. I have currently three major ones. First one would be justice or fairness. Second one would be freedom or choice, and the third one
Mhm.
would be abundance, or basically uh, experience or amount, or even communicating them is kind of different, because I came up actually to these values by visual exploration,
Yeah,
where I was thinking in graphs and these kind of things, and then converted into patterns, and from there just to find a word that would describe these. So this is something that I uh, do not change pretty much uh, never. I try to stick with these kind of values because I believe those are the ones who create the most amount of positivity, not only to me but also to other people.
right.
Because in a way, I guess, so with discriminating or manipulating, you will not get very far, and this is something that also people generally accept as not being something positive.
Yeah,
So when it comes to values, I try not to change them. I try to be very aligned with them and be a person of integrity and to stay aligned with these values with anything that I do. But when it comes to new concepts and ideas and these kind of things, I am very open to any kind of idea, and in order to explore it, even if it may look crazy or stupid, or some people may find it offensive, I believe that it is worth exploring it and then
Yeah.
finding the reasons of why it is perceived that way. Because sometimes people may not may only not understand it properly, or maybe looking at it only from a limited perspective, and therefore, even though the core idea itself may be actually interesting, only the presentation may be the reason why people may not like it, or the person who's communicating it
Yeah.
may have some kind of personal issues that they then try to project on the idea itself, even though the idea itself is separate from the person.
Yeah.
So I think there's this big five test, which is measuring this kind of openness to ideas, and that is
Yeah.
pretty much the highest on me,
Same.
being openness to things.
Yeah.
So when it comes to ideas, concepts, and these kind of things, I am very open to explore many of them. But when it comes to values, I'm very careful with them, uh, and uh, do not succumb to changing my values, or not being aligned with them very easily,
Right.
because these are something that I've built on and hold on to
Yeah.
very strong.
It's funny you say that because that's the thing. Like I've learned that behavior is very flexible. People can learn to do basically anything, and they can learn to act like any personality type. You know, an introvert can appear very extroverted if they want to, and if they practice, and if they do it the right way. The thing that I noticed is people's values tend to stay relatively consistent throughout most of their life. So if you go down to it, we should be measuring people's personality based on their values, not necessarily based on their stereotypical behavior, because we know that, put a person in a certain group and they'll be very outgoing and social, put them in another group and they'll be a little bit more reserved and shy. It depends on what people you're with, and it depends on what situation you're in. So our behavior is very flexible and changeable, but our values very difficult to change. That's like the thing they talk about, in Franz Kafka's, War and Peace and other books. They're deep and heavy existential books, but they're essentially about people that mess up, that break their own value system, that do things they know are wrong. And when you do that, when you do things that you know are wrong, that can mess you up for the rest of your life. Like those are the things that you find yourself losing sleep over, like at the end of the night. Like those memories of like situations where you did things were wrong. And so that's it's very hard to convince yourself. You can try to say, oh, I don't care, it doesn't matter to me, but it does, and it does mess you up. So being honest about that and recognizing, that I do have values and these things clearly do matter to me, and I clearly should listen to this, honor this as much as I can. It's very positive for your happiness and health and well-being for a long perspective.
So when you believe that these kind of values are very important, like, do you have any kind of suggestions on how people can come to find them, or better define them, or gain clarity on them, so that they know and can better stay aligned with them?
Yeah. The number one thing I do is say is if you have no idea, if you're absolutely lost, I have no idea what I want. I have no idea about anything. Just go out and do anything. Honestly, just try whatever. Like try becoming a drug dealer or a mafia boss or something, and see how it feels. Like okay, that's pretty extreme, but go out and have relationships and learn from those relationships. Crash and burn a few times and notice what did I like about those relationships and what didn't I like about them. Uh, People make it sometimes too hypothetical, especially if you're very anxious, you're very introverted, you're very intuitive, and you're like in this situation where you want to overthink everything and you want to know in your own head what is right before you've even done anything. Uh, but here's the secret, especially for us introverted intuitives. Uh, if you want to develop your introvert intuition, you have to develop your extroverted sensing. So you have to go out and have experiences, and then you have to stay back inside and reflect on those experiences and see how those made you feel, and and that's gonna be like that's gonna do wonders for your personal philosophy and morals and your worldview and everything.
So I guess, in a sense, it will not only be about experiencing, but also about reflecting on the experience. So it's not only experience, but evaluated experience that actually
Yeah,
helps you grow and mature.
yeah,
And I think these concepts also apply to the difference between age and maturity, where maturity does not come from age itself, because there are some people who are very young but act very maturely, and there are some people who are very old but still act like a child.
mm,
Uh, Even though they may have a lot of experiences, if they do not reflect on these experiences, if
yeah.
they do not try to learn from their own mistakes and analyze what was good, what was bad, then I guess there will be no change. And I believe people who are mature are actually those who are able to change themselves and learn from their mistakes. And that is basically how they gain maturity. And uh, that would be basically my perspective on this.
I think that's a very good point. Age does not necessarily mean maturity at all. It's everyone develops at a different pace. Some people basically born Buddha or Jesus in a sense, with all the wisdom in the world, you know. And some people might experience more troubles and might be at a different pace in life, and might figure things out more slowly. And like the most important thing is what you say is pay attention. Like so many people live on autopilot and don't even reflect on their experiences or what they're doing with their life. But uh, try your best to pay attention to your decisions, to what people say, to what you feel in the moment. How things influence you, to your actions. Are your actions consistent with your values? Um, in what ways do you notice that? Really take the time to notice things. So I had a question because I wanted to jump back to something you said, and
Okay.
that's in regards to you mentioned justice was one of your core values, and I was
Yes.
wondering how that manifests.
Now, the way word justice is also like kind of fairness. So when I'm thinking about values, I think about like the concepts or the abstract definition, and then I just use words in order to communicate them. So justice would be similar to fairness, but not similar to equality, because, for example, the difference between equality and fairness is that when with equality you try to keep everyone on the same level and treat everyone based on the same rules. But
Yeah,
fairness is different. Fairness is also um, considering other conditions, that
yeah,
people do not start with the same kind of traits or features or at the same state, and
right.
therefore, fair. If I should formalize it in the most simple thing, then fairness equals equality plus certain conditions,
Yeah,
uh, based on which you try to offset the basic inequality. Because
right.
in the world, people are unequal. Like people are not born equally, either
Yeah,
based on their nature or nurture, and therefore fairness is trying to create equality by applying uh, the conditions in order to offset the inequality in a way. So
yeah,
perfect equality will not actually be ever achievable, because if people start unequal, then it's very difficult to bring them to some kind of equal. And
right.
also, people have different kind of potentials, so treating people the same will actually have different kind of effects on other people. I believe
Right.
you know a lot about this, that if you try to treat people like a certain type, you will have very different results if you were treating them as different kind of type.
Yeah,
And that is why the justice or the fairness is for me to try to not treat people equally, but treat them based on fairness and justice in a way that I try to also consider other variables or factors that may be relevant in that kind of case. And I guess this would be basically my priority value,
yeah,
that try to treat people fairly, and not only people but also ideas. That is also connected to me being open to other ideas, where
Yeah.
I not only try to apply this concept of justice or fairness towards people but also to ideas. That means that I will not be prejudiced about any kind of idea just because it may seem wrong, but I will first explore it and really give it at least a chance to uh, maybe find out that um, it may be actually better than it seems on the first time.
Yeah.
And I guess this goes also with my other values, that I do not only try to apply them on a specific case or on specific people, specific objects, but I try to apply them across everything throughout all of my behavior and interactions, not only with living things but also not living things. And I guess this would be the way of how I would explain it. And because life would be so much easier if there was equality, because then you could just make up the rules and treat everyone the same.
Yeah.
But because there's this baseline of inequality, then achieving fairness or justice can be sometimes very tricky, because when you're dealing with inequality and then you try to apply certain conditions to try to balance on certain things in order to make them more equal or
Right.
less unequal. I guess this would be the best thing, that uh, the concept of justice or fairness is to reduce inequality without actually treating everyone the same.
Yeah.
Uh, and one of the problems is also when you try to overcompensate, that in order to fight injustice, you use injustice, and therefore try to use like kind of the same means in order to
Yeah.
offset this. But the way of how you're approaching it is actually creating different kind of injustice,
Yeah.
and that is why also morality is very kind of important factor that I always consider,
Yeah.
because even though you may say that you are fighting for justice, like if you're doing injustice by fighting for justice, then is it actually something that would be good to do, a moral thing to
Yeah.
do? I believe not so. And maybe I'm talking too long, but I think this is also perfectly aligned or connected to superheroes and Batman. And one of the things I admire about Batman is actually that he refuses to fight crime by doing immoral things, and
Yeah.
is refusing to kill,
Yeah.
because there is this one of his quote from his that by killing others, or by killing or doing injustice against villains, then you actually are not a hero but just a villain fighting other villains. And that is
Yeah.
why justice, morality, and these kind of things are very important to me, uh, because some people may be blind to the fact that by trying to create justice, they're just doing more injustice, even though they
Yeah.
don't realize it. So, always trying to consider my actions, whether even though I may have good intentions, maybe I need to also look at other consequences and other people that are connected to the thing I'm doing.
Yeah, it's like something I'm learning when it comes to ideology and politics and so on. Is that all ideas need protection measurements from themselves. Uh, so it's almost like you need to develop a safety mechanism to protect yourself from your own ideology. Because no matter what ideology you have, no principle, no moral law is so right that it doesn't have exceptions. And if you live a law 100% completely and perfectly, it's going to mess you up over time. You're going to notice that it's not always going to work for you. Um, Not even like absolute compassion in itself will work completely, because there are psychopaths and sociopaths in the world that could manipulate that. So nothing in the world, like no matter how good it is perfect. Carl Jung, he had a term for it. Is he talks about enantiodromia. It's like he's warning to the world, because what he warns is that if you hold too firm to any ideology, you're going to see it slowly become twisted over time till you become your worst enemy. Uh, And he talks about this in the context of Christianity to explain how Christianity, which comes from the idea of Jesus and turning the other cheek and treating everyone with kindness, how Christianity has come to be used as a tool for crusades across the world and all kinds of manners of injustice and wrongs. Um, and basically it's that that self-righteousness that can come from that I am doing good and I am honoring Jesus and I'm in the name of God, that becomes like this exception that allows you to do wrong or bad things, kill people even, or persecute people, all in the name of your good ideology and that you're doing the right thing in a sense. So that's something we should all, it's not just for Christians, it's just something everyone should be very aware of. And I think Batman illustrates that principle with the not killing people. That's his safety mechanism. That's how he keeps his own justice ideology from becoming corrupted, basically. Because if he starts pursuing justice at any cost, eventually he's going to devalue his own justice to the point where there is no point to having the justice and to begin with because everyone's just killing everyone. He's just created some kind of cycle of violence where no laws even matter anymore, and he's going to become his own. He's going to erode his own value system.
Okay, I think this is very good explanation. And what could be the kind of solutions, like you mentioned, that have some kind of safety nets or protocols?
Yeah,
But what do you think that people, because even the villains see themselves as the heroes, like creating this kind of self mechanisms for yourself may not actually be always the thing that you may be even able to do, because you may be blind towards your vision so much that you don't realize the impact on others.
yeah.
So what would be your kind of stance or perspective also on criticism and being open to basically criticize others and their views, not in a way to degrade them, but maybe to show them the perspective they may not be looking at, or they may be blind to.
Yeah. So this is one I got from Dale Carnegie's "How to Become Everyone's Friend and How to Influence People," which is really a great book. It sounds like it's super malicious and manipulative, but it's actually quite a fair and nice book that talks about the importance of being sincere and honest. Uh, so what he argues in that book is that everyone is right from their own point of view. So if you can recognize that, you can't really judge anyone, because if you were in their shoes, you'd make the same decisions that they would. If you were had experienced what they experienced and lived their life, and up to that point, you would have made the same decisions. So we can't really hold too much resentment towards other people, because we have to understand everyone is coming from somewhere. And he gives some great examples there. It's like one of them that they stuck with me was uh, don't judge people by your own principles, judge people by their own principles. So if you know what people want, and if you can pay attention to other people and their values and their feelings and their needs, and if you can consider that, it's going to be a lot easier for you to live in harmony with other people and to essentially live as a human being in the world, because it's easy to be high-minded and perfect and to think that you know everything and that you have all the answers. But if you choose to live that way, you're not going to have any friends. You're not going to be able to like connect with people and build relationships and succeed in the world, because everyone has that. Everyone has their own values and everyone has their reasons for things. So yeah, you have to find a way to align your values and principles with the values of other people.
And I believe that MBTI and psychology may be a nice way to kind of get at least introduced in this kind of things you were talking about,
Yeah,
differences between other people, where sometimes people may have this kind of tendency to project their own values onto others, and then basically judge them by their own values, not realizing that people have different kind of values and behave differently. And therefore MBTI and this theory of 16 personalities and trying to understand people and their differences between them may be nice introduction to people, realizing the differences between people and learning more not only about others but also about themselves and how they're behaving towards other people. So therefore, I believe that what you're doing has a lot of potential in helping people and the whole world as a whole. So I guess, do you have any kind of closing thoughts or your message to the world that you would like to say to everyone?
Oh no, just yeah, thank you for having me on. And this was a fascinating discussion. And I'm gonna. You made me think about several things: justice, visual spatial intelligence. So I'm gonna think about those things. And yeah, I hope we can have more discussions like this in the future.
Okay, so thank you for coming, and I guess maybe we'll see each other again later.
Sounds good.
To find out more about Erik, make sure to visit his YouTube channel, Erik Thor, and don't forget to subscribe.